What is up, fam? Welcome to SkillTree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So today's video, I'm gonna do in a bit of a build-along style where we try to make this badass wizard hat from Dieselpunk. Now, this is the second pattern I'm using from Dieselpunk. The first one was this here Plague Doctor's mask, which was awesome. They're not paying me to like advertise their stuff or use it. I just love their patterns, and I keep scrolling through the site and seeing other ones that I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that. So that's what today is. Today is a thing that I really wanted to do, and you get to come along with me. So without much further ado, let's level up this skill. Getting started. With this project, it all starts with the template. Links to this particular template, if you want to follow along, is down in the description. If you get this template, you're going to notice that it has like little dotted lines where the two pages will overlap. Since the pieces being cut out are so big, it takes multiple pieces of paper kind of layered next to each other to make the whole thing. So I started by cutting along those dotted lines. Now I'm carefully lining them up and taping them all together. With everything all lined up, it's time to actually cut out the patterns. So I actually find this part real relaxing, just kind of playing with scissors. For this build, I'm opting to use 4-ounce veg tan leather, mostly because Black Friday just passed and it was on sale. I got a bunch of it. Thank you, Tandy leather. I carefully position the pieces to use as little of the leather as possible, because I'm cheap and I could use it for more projects later on. Then I trace the patterns onto the leather with a pen. Next, using an awl, I mark out all of the holes. And there are a lot of holes in these patterns. But since they're all gonna like stitch together, it's really important that you get the holes right so everything lines up. Now we just remove the templates and carefully cut all of our shapes out of the leather with a sharp knife. Now I'm going back through with my rotary punch to punch out all of my holes. I think a fair bit of this leather is going to be exposed, so I'm also going to use a slicker on the edges, just to make sure everything stays as professional looking as possible. With all my pieces cut and the thousands of holes punched, it's time for tooling the leather. Alright fam, here's my dilemma. So I very purposefully started this project early to give myself more time in order to edit and all that to get this video out. My issue is I'm never satisfied with a project. There's always more that I think I can do with it. And this being a fairly simple project, I can get this done in under a day, I'm pretty sure. But I've decided I want to add a few details to it. This is one of those perfect is the enemy of done situations. And I know for a fact that doing this is going to put me behind the 8-ball. But I just can't not do it now that I've thought of it. So we're going to add a little art to this thing, I think. I'm going to take my time and draw everything out on the template first, so I can then transfer it onto my piece exactly in the position I want it. And because it's a wizard hat, I'm looking up all these like arcane alchemical images, all of which, I'm not going to lie, look really cool. I've also opted to add in a bunch of like personal images too. One of like an aperture for like the camera, which I love, and the phase of the moon that I was born under, and like a stylized dog paw. I just think it'd be cool like to have all of this magical text and then things that mean something to me, right? All right, with all that laid out, I'm gonna wet the leather and then carefully position my template on top of it so I can use the stylus to transfer the image. So I'm running into a bit of a problem here because a lot of my image's lines are really fine, and I'm afraid that if I do the standard thing where I'm just cutting it in with the swivel knife and then hammering it, the effect that leaves with kind of a compressed one side to bring up the other side, I don't think is going to look particularly good with the really fine lines I got going here. I think it'll make everything really muddy. To that end, I tested something out using a Dremel. And it came out really good. I'm able to get really fine detail, and the color differentiation where the dye actually sits is really stunning. It really pops. So yeah, this will be like a new bit of this skill to try out because I've never dremeled things into leather before, and I didn't realize how nice it would come out. I got the cleanest results with this detail carving bit from my Dremel set. Again, with it, look at how fine of a detail I'm able to get on these. And depending on how I like lay that bit, the line gets either wider or thinner. I'm really impressed with how easily this thing works. And then to smooth it out further, it turns out I can just go back in with my stylus and smooth out any lines made from the Dremel tool. I am super impressed with how that comes out. That's awesome. And it's way less work than how I usually tool leather, so that's cool too. It was easy enough that I decided to add more symbols along the top of the hat too. Now, because of the way my brain works in conditioning from media, I'm pretty sure, I've decided that like purples are more of a magic color, so I'm going with a mahogany stain this time. Plus, on my test piece, it came out really good, so I'm hoping that the hat as a whole will look good with that color. After rubbing the stain on and polishing back off, look at how much this pops. Like, all of the designs on this thing right now are so clean looking. I decided to dye both sides of the leather because you're going to be able to see inside of the hat too. All right, cool. With that all done, I'm going to clean up right now and reset up my table so that I'm not working on top of dye. With that all set, we can move on to putting it all together. All right, to get started, I need to sew into shape what will be the tip of the hat. Now you're going to notice on the top here, I've got 3 columns of holes punched instead of 2. That's so I can sew them together like this in order to get that point at the end of the hat. Now for the entirety of this project, I'm going to be using the saddle stitch. I go over how to do this in way more detail in my plague mask video, but because this part of the build is a little bit tricky, I'm just going to walk through it real quick. So for starters, the saddle stitch, you're going to need a long piece of thread with a needle on either end. Fold the leather like so in order to line up all the holes. Pass the needle through the top set of holes and pull it so both sides are even. Then thread that same needle back through the second set of holes down. Now pass the second needle through the hole the first needle just came through. Then pull it tight to lock it in place. This makes a tight wrap here at the tip. Now continue down, passing both needles through the same hole in opposite directions and pulling tightly. Once you pass the last set of like 3 holes that are on top of each other, you transition to putting it through only the 2 holes on the edges at a time. So the stitch here is exactly the same, it's just challenging getting my meaty hands inside this little cone. It is getting easier now that it's widening out though. Once at the end, I just back stitch a few holes to lock everything in place and cut the excess thread away. All right, and that's the very tip of the hat all done. On to the next piece. So obviously what we're gonna want is this ring shape. To do this, we need to sew these edge holes here together. But we wanna do this inside out. Just line the holes up and saddle stitch them together. And once we're done, we just turn it inside out. This way the piece has kind of that hidden stitch on the inside. Now we gotta sew these 2 pieces together. Again, we're just using the saddle stitch to accomplish this. By the end of this project, our stitching skills are gonna be on point. Now we're just gonna rinse and repeat all the way down the line. Sew the seam, flip it right side out, connect it to the last piece. You get the idea. I'm not going to make you watch every stitch. Okay, now I have the top built and I have the brim of my hat. Before I connect them though, I'm going to add wire around the rim. The wire is supposed to be there to help stop the brim from kind of sagging. I cut a section of wire out so that it overlaps a little bit. You don't want to cut it so it's exactly the right size of the circumference of your brim. If you did that, you'd always have an area in the leather where it kind of breaks. By overlapping, you're going to make sure it's a strong piece all the way through. To get started, I roll the edge of the hat over here, line up the holes, and you guessed it, saddle stitch. Just so many saddle stitches. All right, now that a few of these stitches are in place, I'm gonna thread this wire through the little tunnel I've created here. Then I just continue sewing the leather all around it until I reach the last satisfying stitch. And with that last little bit, we are done with the brim. Check that out, that actually came out really, really good. So I just kind of assumed that that metal ring would like kind of add support to stop it from flopping around, but it makes the whole thing really taut as well, which isn't something I actually thought that it was gonna do. Also, I'd imagine because it's so flexy inside there, you can kind of bend the rim to look however you want and straighten it back out again. So you can kind of get kind of a cool wave to it if you want, almost like a cowboy style, 10-gallon hat where you can make it go like this and, come up or whatever, give it a lot of character. So I really dig how this is coming out. So now we have the 2 major components, we have the brim and we have this little top here. All we gotta do, stick them together, which means more sewing, there's so much sewing. One more quick FYI with this, on the template, one of the holes here for the brim was actually marked with a dot that tells it where the center is. And you're gonna need that because this was made to fit a human head, and human heads aren't round, they're kind of oblong, longer front and back than they are on the sides. So I made here so that the top point of my star is facing forward. But yeah, if you follow the same pattern, just make sure you keep that in mind. And again, this bit is just more of the same. Just put the brim in place and start staddle stitching. That becomes hard to say after a while. I think I'm getting tired. Just put the brim in place and start saddle stitching, making sure everything is pulled tight all the way around. So I'm super impressed with how well these holes are lining up. When I did up in here, one of these rings, they were just like off a little bit, and I had to chase around with the needle to find it. But these ones are going straight in and straight out. It's really kind of a joy to sew, actually. Finishing up the back stitch, and check that out. That looks so good. Look at how good this stitch is. Check it out. Check out that stitch. Look how clean that lays down against the brim. It came out so good. All right, moment of truth. Ready? Oh, yeah. What is up? Check that out. Here's what I will say. This little ridge right here where everything kind of comes together, that I can feel it a little bit on the back of my head. Not bad, and I think over time it's gonna bend and lay flat. It feels really solid. Honestly, it feels like a good hat. That came out way better than I thought it was gonna. Look at that. The writing, the magical symbols all over it. That's super cool. All right, that is my badass wizard hat build. Thank you again to Tony from Dieselpunk for making these amazing patterns. If you want to give it a try, again, the link to this pattern is in the description below. On a different note, especially if you've been watching my show for a while, let me know what you thought of today's video. I tried to do it in a little bit more of a relaxed style than I usually do it in. Let me know if that resonated or you thought it was weird or whatever. It's your input is the most important input to me. I want to make sure I'm making things that you want to watch. If you did enjoy it, why don't you hit me with some of that thumbs up love, and do not forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. Also, if there's a skill or a project you want me to cover, leave it in the comment section and I will add it to the list. Alright, well I should get going. Now that I'm officially a wizard, I need to start working on my magic spells. In the meantime, keep leveling up, you.